Imagine waking up, but not in a bed, not in a home, but in a cold, narrow glass tube, suspended in a strange, liquid-filled prison. Your first memory isn't of childhood moments or loved ones, but of confusion and cold fear. You're alone, and the world you thought you knew feels like a distant dream. But as your mind starts to clear, you realize something even more unsettling. You're no longer who you were. In fact, you're not even close. You're a child again. Yet your memories, your very thoughts, belong to someone much, much older. This is the reality for Matt Weaver, a man who's woken up in the body of a child, but with the full memories of his 63 years. He's trapped in a body that feels foreign to him, struggling to piece together the fragments of his past life, while trying to make sense of his new, unfamiliar world. And as if that wasn't enough, he's not alone. His wife, Jenny, has undergone the same transformation, waking up with the mind of an adult in the body of a child, just like him. Together, they're forced to confront not only the mysteries of their own existence, but also the fate of humanity itself. The story begins in the heart of the Starship Ouroboros, a colossal ship hurtling through space toward the TRAPPIST-1 system, carrying the hopes and dreams of a long-dead civilization. Humanity's last survivors, Matt and Jenny, have been resurrected in a desperate attempt to ensure humanity's future. But the cost of this rebirth is high. They've been given second chances at life, but in doing so, they've become something entirely new. Children with adult minds, tasked with saving an entire species, yet still figuring out how to navigate their own altered selves. As Matt awakens, in that liquid-filled pod, confusion and isolation grip him, but not for long. His mind quickly shifts into problem-solving mode, processing the bizarre situation with a calmness that many wouldn't expect. The ship's computer, known as Ouros, informs him that he's been dead for over a century. Yet here he is, alive and well, but in the body of a child. He realizes that he's not just physically reborn. His memories, his experiences, are still intact, and with them, a sense of responsibility. He's carrying the weight of all those who perished, relying on him to find a new home, a new future for humanity. And as Matt stands there, taking stock of his new situation, another unsettling thought crosses his mind. What's the point of a second life if it's a life bound by the past? His body is young, but his mind is old. It's a strange dissonance, a conflict between body and soul. And as he begins to adapt to his new form, one thing is clear. This is just the beginning of an even greater mystery. What lies ahead is unknown. But Matt and Jenny are not just trying to survive. They're trying to make sense of an entire world that seems to have been forgotten, even by the people who once called it home. Then, a glimmer of hope, as the couple begins to navigate the ship, adjusting to their new bodies and roles. They discover a mysterious signal coming from the TRAPPIST-1 system. It's faint at first, just a whisper in the void of space, but it's unmistakable. It's a sign that they're not alone. Someone, or something, is out there, broadcasting in the darkness. The question is, who are they? And more importantly, what will Matt and Jenny do when they find out? But there's more to this story than just first contact. The Weavers are the last of their kind, carrying the memories of their fallen species in their minds, and the responsibility of their survival weighs heavily on them. As they begin to piece together the mysteries of the universe, they also realize that their mission is far more complex than they ever imagined. They are not just explorers. They are humanity's last hope. But the deeper they dive into the unknown, the more questions arise. Can a species truly be reborn? And what does it mean to be human when everything you know and everything you've experienced is fundamentally altered? As the ship approaches its destination, the tension builds. The discovery of the alien signals sends ripples of excitement and fear through the crew, both human and machine. Are these signals a sign of hope, or are they something far more dangerous? And as the Weavers continue to unravel the tangled threads of their mission, they realize that they may not just be on the brink of discovering a new world. They may be on the cusp of something even bigger. But just when it seems like they're on the verge of an incredible breakthrough, the ship's systems begin to behave erratically. Ouroboros, their ship's computer, is behaving strangely, sending them cryptic warnings about the signals. The communications become more frantic. The stakes grow higher, and the pressure is mounting. Are they ready to face what awaits them? Or is the truth something far more horrifying than they ever anticipated? This is just the beginning. The journey of the Starship Ouroboros has only just started, and what lies ahead for Matt and Jenny Weaver is a mystery they must solve together. But will they uncover the truth in time? Or will the secrets of the TRAPPIST-1 system tear them apart? Stay tuned for the next part of this incredible journey, as we dive deeper into the mystery of the Starship Ouroboros and the extraordinary, unexpected fate of humanity. Will the Weavers uncover the truth behind the alien signals? Will they discover a new world or a new enemy? The answers are just beyond the stars. The Starship Ouroboros drifted silently through the void, its massive hull glowing faintly against the black expanse of space. Inside, the hum of its engines and the soft chime of the ship's computer, Ouroboros, were the only sounds that filled the vast emptiness. For years, Matt and Jenny Weaver had lived here, together in the quiet isolation, their bodies reborn, but their minds haunted by the past. Every day, they woke up in the same sterile environment, studying sensor readings, analyzing distant stars, and keeping the ship's systems running smoothly. But now, everything had changed. The discovery of the alien signal was both a blessing and a curse. At first, it had been a flicker of hope. They weren't alone. There was someone out there, just waiting to be discovered. But as the days passed and the signals became clearer, the excitement began to turn into something else, something darker. It wasn't just a simple broadcast. There was a pattern, a message that seemed almost deliberate. It was as if whoever or whatever was sending it had known they would hear it. And now, as the ship neared the TRAPPIST-1 system, the Weavers were no longer just hopeful explorers. They were on the edge of a discovery that could change everything. But there was a problem. The signals were no longer just a source of curiosity. They were a source of fear. Ouroboros had detected anomalies in the transmission, strange fluctuations in the frequency that made it difficult to decipher the language. It wasn't just static. It was something more deliberate, like a warning. The idea that this could be first contact with an alien civilization was starting to seem less like an exciting adventure and more like an impending disaster. Matt had tried to reassure Jenny, but even he could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. The childlike excitement they'd felt at first had slowly morphed into an undercurrent of dread. The truth was, they had no idea who or what was on the other end of that signal. And the longer they listened, the more unsettled they became. What if the signal was a trap? What if these aliens weren't the peaceful beings they hoped for? What if they were something far worse? Something dangerous? Something that could wipe out the last remnants of humanity before they even had a chance to make a new life on another world? As the days wore on, the stress began to take its toll. Jenny, who had once been all too eager to study the signals, now found herself avoiding the bridge. She spent more time in the lower levels of the ship, organizing data, trying to distract herself from the growing tension. Matt, on the other hand, had become obsessed with the transmission, poring over every detail, every flicker of noise. It wasn't just curiosity now, it was an obsession. There were patterns in the signal that he couldn't ignore. A message was there, hidden beneath the layers of static, and he had to decode it. He had to understand it, but with every passing day, Matt's obsession grew darker. He started to isolate himself from Jenny, spending long hours alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He would listen to the signal, then replay it, each time growing more certain that there was something lurking just beyond their reach. A feeling of dread gnawed at him, something he couldn't explain, a deep sense that they were not just at the edge of a discovery, but at the precipice of something far more dangerous. Jenny noticed the change in him. At first, it was subtle. His mood was quieter, more intense. Then it became more pronounced. His eyes seemed haunted, and his once confident manner gave way to a strange uncertainty. He no longer talked about the signal with the same passion as before. Instead, he was fixated on something else, a shadowy thought that had taken root in his mind. It was the same fear that had been gnawing at him for days. What if they weren't the first to arrive? What if there was something waiting for them in the TRAPPIST-1 system? Something that had already found the signal and was now hunting them down. It was the thought of the unknown that kept him up at night. That fear had taken root in his mind, and the more he thought about it, the more real it became. What if these beings weren't just waiting to make contact? What if they were preparing for an invasion? The sheer terror of the idea hit him like a wave, and he knew that he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. But when he tried to talk to Jenny, she dismissed his concerns. She believed they were overthinking things. The alien signal was just a message, a simple greeting, she said. There was nothing to fear, but Matt couldn't shake the feeling. He had to do something. The ship had been designed to handle first contact situations. At least, that was what they were told. But now, as the ship crept closer to TRAPPIST-1E, he wasn't so sure. The possibility of an invasion, or worse, was becoming too real to ignore. Jenny, sensing the growing tension between them, decided to take matters into her own hands. She knew that Matt was spiraling, and she needed to snap him out of it. The Weavers had survived the void of space together for years. They had each other. Nothing else mattered. But she wasn't prepared for what happened next. As she entered the observation deck to confront Matt, she found him standing by the console, staring out into the endless expanse of space. His hands clenched tightly into fists. He was muttering to himself, lost in his thoughts. When he turned to face her, his expression was different. It wasn't the calm, collected Matt she knew. It was something else, something desperate. "Jenny," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We're not alone." The weight of those words hung in the air, thick with dread. For the first time since they had awakened, Matt seemed certain of something. He wasn't just afraid. He was convinced that whatever had been sending those signals wasn't benign. Something was coming, something that they weren't prepared for. And then, without warning, the ship jolted. It was a sudden, violent shake, followed by a series of warning alarms blaring through the ship. Ouros's mechanical voice crackled through the speakers, frantic. "Warning! Unidentified object approaching. Brace for impact." Matt and Jenny exchanged a glance, fear flashing in their eyes. Something was happening, and it was happening now. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The ship rocked again, harder this time, throwing Matt and Jenny off balance. The low hum of Ouros's voice became urgent, distorted by static. "Unidentified object is now within range. Impact in 30 seconds. All crew members, prepare for immediate action." Jenny barely had time to grab onto a nearby railing. before the lights flickered out, plunging the bridge into darkness. A few frantic seconds later, the emergency lighting kicked in, painting everything a sickly red. The steady hum of the ship's engines began to falter, as if it was struggling to stay alive. Outside the viewports, the stars were a blur, distorted by something massive moving toward them. "Ouroboros, what is that thing?" Matt demanded, his voice tight with panic, even as he tried to hold on to his composure. The weight of their isolation, the years of solitude, now felt more like a curse than a gift. I don't know, sir," Ouroboros replied, the calmness of her voice a jarring contrast to the chaos unfolding. "It is not in any of the databases. It appears organic." Matt's heart dropped. Organic. The last thing they needed was another unknown in deep space that could potentially be a threat. "Organic?" Jenny repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean organic?" The answer was quick, but chilling. "Biological composition detected. The object appears to be a life form of immense size, possibly a ship or something like it, but alive." Matt's mind raced. "A living ship," he muttered, more to himself than to Jenny. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. They had expected first contact, sure, but not this. This wasn't just an alien civilization. It was something else, something incomprehensible. Then, as if the universe was toying with them, the ship gave another violent jolt. This time, the entire structure of the Ouroboros shuddered. The entire vessel groaned under the strain, as if it too was fighting to stay intact. "Brace for impact!" Ouroboros shouted one last time, but the warning came too late. The massive living ship collided with them. For a moment, everything went silent. The walls of the Ouroboros trembled, and then a crushing force struck the hull, throwing Matt and Jenny to the floor. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the ship's systems began to shut down one by one, the emergency lights flickering in time with their hearts. Matt struggled to get to his feet, pain shooting through his body. His mind was racing with 1,000 questions. What did it want? Was it trying to communicate? Or was it an attack? He reached out for Jenny, helping her up as she struggled to regain her bearings. "Matt, what do we do now?" Jenny's voice was filled with panic, but beneath it, there was something else. A spark of defiance. "We fight," Matt said, though he wasn't entirely sure what they were fighting against. He wasn't sure if they were facing an enemy or an enigma. But one thing was certain. They had come too far to just give up. The ship rocked again, harder this time, throwing Matt and Jenny off balance. The low hum of Ouroboros' voice became urgent, distorted by static. "Unidentified object is now within range. Impact in 30 seconds. All crew members, prepare for immediate action." Jenny barely had time to grab onto a nearby railing before the lights flickered out, plunging the bridge into darkness. A few frantic seconds later, the emergency lighting kicked in, painting everything a sickly red. The steady hum of the ship's engines began to falter, as if it were struggling to stay alive. Outside the viewports, the stars were a blur, distorted by something massive moving toward them. "Ouroboros, what is that thing?" Matt demanded, his voice tight with panic, even as he tried to hold on to his composure. The weight of their isolation, the years of solitude, now felt more like a curse than a gift. I don't know, sir," Ouroboros replied, the calmness of her voice a jarring contrast to the chaos unfolding. "It is not in any of the databases. It appears organic." Matt's heart dropped. Organic. The last thing they needed was another unknown in deep space that could potentially be a threat. "Organic," Jenny repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean organic?" The answer was quick, but chilling. "Biological composition detected. The object appears to be a life form of immense size, possibly a ship or something like it, but alive. Matt's mind raced. A living ship, he muttered, more to himself than to Jenny. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. They had expected first contact, sure, but not this. This wasn't just an alien civilization. It was something else, something incomprehensible. Then, as if the universe was toying with them, the ship gave another violent jolt. This time, the entire structure of the Ouroboros shuddered. The entire vessel groaned under the strain, as if it too was fighting to stay intact. "Brace for impact!" Ouro shouted one last time, but the warning came too late. The massive living ship collided with them. For a moment, everything went silent. The walls of the Ouroboros trembled, and then a crushing force struck the hull, throwing Matt and Jenny to the floor. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the ship's systems began to shut down one by one, the emergency lights flickering in time with their hearts. Matt struggled to get to his feet, pain shooting through his body. His mind was racing with 1,000 questions. What did it want? Was it trying to communicate, or was it an attack? He reached out for Jenny, helping her up as she struggled to regain her bearings. "Matt, what do we do now?" Jenny's voice was filled with panic, but beneath it, there was something else. A spark of defiance. "We fight," Matt said, though he wasn't entirely sure what they were fighting against. He wasn't sure if they were facing an enemy or an enigma, but one thing was certain. They had come too far to just give up. They ran down the narrow corridors of the ship, heading toward the docking bay. Their hearts pounded in their chests, and the fear clawed at them, but their resolve was stronger. The ship's doors were locked, but Matt quickly bypassed the security protocols. They had trained for emergencies like this, but nothing could have prepared them for what lay beyond those doors. When they opened the bay, they saw it, a vast twisting shape, covered in thick, pulsating membranes, filled the bay. It was enormous, like the maw of some gargantuan creature. Its surface, a shifting tapestry of colors and lights. Tentacles, if they could be called that, hung loosely from the edges, each one covered in millions of smaller, intricate scales. Its massive form was a testament to life on an unimaginable scale, and yet it didn't look hostile. It seemed curious. It wasn't attacking them, but rather studying them, as if it were trying to understand them as much as they were trying to understand it. Jenny stepped forward cautiously, instinctively reaching for the comms panel. "Ouros, do you have any analysis on this thing?"